coordinated wearing dark colours.
Except me. Except you. And I'm usually...
But you're the, you know...
Yeah.
They were just on sale.
Good to go?
And it comfy.
All right. I won't introduce myself again unless there's new people. I'm Natty, and I'll be hosting. And we're going to get into a talk called Don't Stay in Your Lane. Nice and strong. About creatives who are doing it big. I think when you enter the creative industry, there's so many different questions, like what jobs even exist, what's a good career path, what's a portfolio career, and if you're good at more than one thing, how do you choose, can you choose, all of that sort of stuff. So we're going to get into dispelling the myth that you can't have more than one lane, with these amazing guests on the panel today, who I will introduce in a roll call. So we'll start with Kevin at the far left, who is a director and photographic artist, advertising creative director, and a co-founder of People of Colour Creative, who has worked with the likes of O2, Prime Video, Audi, Adidas, and more. Next up, we have Nuz, who is part of Huck That. So Sabira met Nuz in 2017 at a queer event, and the two hit it off with their friendship connecting with each other culturally and artistically, and the rest was history. Nuz has an unconventional path into the art world, as she is a policymaker by trade and a political strategist. Wow. She grew up doing henna at her local mosque for Eid celebrations, and she brings an unusual experimentational style to her henna that derived from her oil paintings, which she has used on clients such as Ramon and Sunaina, amongst others. Art is therapeutic and spiritual for Nuz, and recently she has been delving into art direction and styling assisting with Sabira on shoots. All right, I'm out of breath. One sec. Will, over here, was born and raised in southern England's Tunbridge Wells, big up Tunbridge Wells, and is an independent musician, songwriter, podcast host, and owns his own label called Bad Hotel. Amazing. And Tobi here, our incredible director, who just debuted a documentary yesterday, is a London-based producer and writer working across television, film, audio, branded content, and live. She has worked with the likes of BBC, British Vogue, Channel 4, Jordan, Nike, Puma, the list, Royal Court Theatre, Sky Arts, Tate Modern, and more. As a writer, Tobi has written for media outlets including Black Ballad, Blavity, Gowdem, HowlRound, The Guardian, The Independent, and Love Magazine, and has essays published in Black Joy and Making Hip Hop Theatre. She also debuted her audio documentary, Rave Rituals, on BBC Sounds and BBC Radio 6. Woo! All right, so I think best place to start is probably just telling us your name, what you do in your own words, and how you kind of first were inspired to take that creative path. Should we start with Kevin?
Yeah, I might just move this slightly. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Perfect. As you said, Kevin Morosky, co-founder of People of Culture Collective. We're not a fan of people of colour as a term. It's weird. It feels like we can just put all the black and brown people over there. Great, over there. Actually, we're more intersectional than that. POC started out as a community space, working in advertising. Me being in different rooms, there was only ever me and my co-founder, regardless if we worked for the same company or not. And we thought that was weird, because if you have common sense, you would know that in terms of pop culture and what is dictated as cool and in, normally derives from black and brown culture, whether that's TikTok, whatever. So we started a WhatsApp group thinking, maybe 20, 30 people would be in it. And by the end of the week, that first WhatsApp group was at capacity. So nearly 4 years on, we have over 1,000 members now in the UK, as well as America and Amsterdam. And we also have different, outlets to do work with different clients, including some of the ones that you mentioned. And the reason why we have that is it's really funny, once you start a thing, all the brands come knocking, like, we want to be involved, and then you have to explain, but we created this safe space because you wasn't a safe space, so why would we let you into the safe space? Doesn't really make sense. So within that capacity, it means that jobs come in and we're able to go back into the community and protect the community and walk away when we want to. If the client is problematic, we're like, yeah, it's cool, keep your money. So that's one side, and then my other side is directing and making films. I'm in the middle of my first feature length, just about to finish writing that with the BBC. And then sometimes I still do other creative stuff if I feel like it, if I feel like it's going to spark new conversations within the culture and inspire people, etc. So I think, yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Nez, you want to go?
Yeah, okay, so this is a bit. So I'm Nuz. I run Huck That, which is a platform. So we do art direction, we do henna, we do photography and styling. So I run it with my partner, Sabira, who's not here today. Sabira is of Bengali heritage, I'm Pakistani. And so together we kind of just met. I guess we met at a queer event called AZ Hub Magazine, and she was just sat at a stall doing henna. It was her first ever stall, and I'd never seen henna being done. We know like tattoo artists, that's considered an art form, but like South Asian art, henna isn't really considered like much of an art form. It's just considered like, oh yeah, you get henna done on Eid or, you know, Holi or whatever. So, and essentially me and Sabira wanted to make henna accessible for queer spaces specifically, so queer people of color. Like a lot of our brown friends couldn't get henna done traditionally, and it's supposed to be like a women's art, and you know, there's lots of history behind it and transcends lots of cultures. And I had a great interest in it because I grew up like doing it at my local mosque, as you mentioned. So I kind of was always good at it. I guess I was always like one of those kids who was just kind of creative all the time, like was drawing on walls and like stuff. But again, I had Asian parents who were first generation immigrants. Neither of my parents speak any English, didn't have any formal education, and wanted, you know, they came to this country with like big hopes and dreams, wanted me to be a doctor and a lawyer. So I did a politics degree going to university. Ended up working on EU exit and like, you know, doing policy work in government around COVID-19 response, but always was very artistic on the side and did lots of exhibits. And I was like, oh, I can do both. Like, why can't I do both? Like, why do people have to be like, you fit in this box or you fit in that box? Like, I have passion for both of these things. I have passion to please my parents and, you know, earn money and give back to the community in the best way I know possibly can. But also I can do that through art. It doesn't have to be very linear. It can be, you know, both can coexist. So I guess that's how it started. I helped her out on the stall, and the line grew and grew and grew, and people were really excited, and people liked our designs. And, you know, we weren't like conventional henna pattern artists. We understood people's identities. We understood the kind of things that they came, and we would have a conversation with them. It would be more of a rapport rather than, yeah, you just come and get your henna done and you just go away and we never see you again. It's more of like, we are people's we're both people's people, so I guess people's persons. And we kind of created a community around that. So, you know, people, if they were doing events, they'd book us, and then we'd go there and people would know us, and, you know, we'd create a safe space, an environment, non-judgmental. Doesn't matter what religion, background. You could be queer and Muslim, you could just be Muslim, you could, you know, it could be a wedding, it could be a queer wedding, it could be like a spectrum, it could be a baby shower, it didn't matter. Like, we would cater to all people. And I think that's what kind of distinguished us from like other henna clients, which would always, like, one of my experiences was that I went into, and I'd love doing my henna and getting it done professionally as well, and the client was really judgmental about, you know, my skin tone, and I have really big hair, like I don't conventionally look stereotypically, like that's why I'm wearing a hat, but I'm of mixed heritage in terms of, in Pakistan we have a lot of different ethnic groups as well, which people don't know about. So we had a whole conversation around that, and she just wasn't very, like, she was like, oh, I didn't know CDs can be Pakistani or, you know, like so on and so forth. And I was explaining my mother is Punjabi and my father is Sidi. And so it was difficult to kind of explain that sort of sense as well. And I shouldn't have had to explain myself, but like, I just didn't feel comfortable in the client relationship. So I was like, oh, I want to create a space where nobody has to feel judged, like, doesn't matter. So that was that. And then we just ended up, you know, getting clients. So we did Joy Crook's henna for the Brits. Don't know if anybody saw the Brit Awards, but she wore a beautiful outfit which really showcased her heritage, and we worked with her to be able to do that. And so we work with a lot of clients like that now to be able to kind of create that space. So yeah, I'll leave it at that now.
Incredible. Kevin?
My name is Will. What's up, everyone?
Oh, sorry. Oh my God, I was
That
like,
is
why
Kevin.
is he looking at me like that? Sorry, Will.
No,
I
it's
literally
cool.
knew
I'm Kevin now. Sweet. Yeah, so I am I'm an indie pop singer-songwriter artist. I'm 24. I've been releasing music since I was 16, and I kind of got my start was through just like uploading, you know, crappy SoundCloud demos and stuff, and then kind of moved into me and my friend Finn used to like record YouTube videos of me playing, and then at like quite a young age I moved like into like working with a label, and I did an album, my first record. So I'm about to release my third now. That's kind of where I'm at. Did my first record with Atlantic Records, which is like classic big major label. Had that experience, and it was obviously like dope to do that, and that was like gave me my start. But I, like many artists, everyone I worked with there left, and then when it came to doing album 2 there, it was just like, you know, if you're a smaller artist on a big label, you can kind of get left behind, you know, it's like a small fish in a big pond kind of thing. Anyway, so I took that moment to like reassess what I was going to do, and then started just with the way things have moved now, you have a lot more freedom to, you know, pretty much anyone can start their own label. So when I say I'm a label owner, I'm basically just someone that puts out like my music through my stuff, because, you know, on many levels, like on a creative level, on an ethical level, like, you know, everyone knows that the major label industry is not it's not a fair deal to artists, and it is often, you know, flies in the face of the creative decisions you want to make. So I started Bad Hotel, which is also a podcast which I kind of get other young creatives in on as well as kind of part of the label identity. And we've had loads of different types of guests on there, whether it's like we had Jack Saunders, who's now gone on to do like the Radio 1 Future Artist show. Other artists like Declan McKenna, just did one with Dodie. We've had like my friend Frank, who's now creative director at Sony. So like there's a whole like mix of, you know, Frank.
Yeah,
okay, cool. Yeah, nice guy.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like it's a real mix of people, and the point of the podcast was to like the path into most of these jobs. Like, I'm sure everyone will agree on this panel. It's like you have a cool job, and it's just like this. There is no set path to get to these things. It's just like the most wiggly, random thing. And people, you know, like people in the audience might be asking, oh, how do I become this? How do I become that? And truth be told, it's different for everyone. So I just wanted to. It's basically just shedding light on people's like origin stories.
Yeah.
They're like villain arc. But no, yeah, so I have that, and then, yeah, other than that, I'm just like chronically online. I have always like hopped between like the new social media and stuff, and have loved, you know, what the internet does for music and how independent it can make you. So yeah, that's pretty much me.
Amazing. Is your villain arc going to be me calling you Kevin?
Yeah, this is actually the start of my villain arc.
Going to write an album about
I will be back next year.
Amazing. Tobi?
Cool. Hi, I'm Tobi. I'm a producer. What's the can you repeat the question?
I guess just generally what inspired you to start on the path that you're on?
Cool. So, yeah, I was really big into like any kind of performing arts at school. I kind of like was in secondary school during the time where arts was still in school was still a thing. So I was really lucky to still be able to engage in like free music lessons and like going to see theatre shows and stuff like that. And then I decided to leave and go to college and do performing arts BTEC. which was obviously very performing heavy, which I didn't necessarily want to be a performer, but I enjoyed kind of being in a room of artists, kind of talking about ideas, figuring out how we were going to do it, and then just like reluctantly I would have to do it to like earn my BTEC. And then at the end, everyone was sort of like auditioning for like drama schools or going to uni, and I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do, so I decided to take like a gap year, which was just like me working because I'm not going to travel around, I don't have any money. And in that time, I was just kind of looking for like apprenticeships or something that I can do so I can stay in the industry while I figure out my life, essentially. And so I ended up doing an apprenticeship with a theatre, or with an art centre called Battersea Art Centre, in community arts administration. So it was a lot of like working with young people, working with communities to make work, essentially. So I was an apprentice producer at BAC, which I didn't know what producing was. I had no intentions of getting into producing. It wasn't a role that was very visible, or was even talked about in terms of like your career. But Battersea Art Centre at the time was a producing house, so you had a team of like 11 producers that were working across all of these different areas of the building, whether that was children's work, young people's work, festivals, the theatre shows, etc., etc. So I was there for about 3 years and kind of just like experimented with everything. It was a really like interdisciplinary kind of place. They didn't put on plays. It was a lot about getting artists into the building and just making stuff. So I love poetry, I love music. I experimented with a lot of that while I was at BAC. After that, went to work for a poetry organisation called Apples and Snakes that worked specifically with poets and spoken word artists. And I was a producer there, mainly doing kind of artist development with poets and spoken word artists, figuring out how they wanted to use poetry to kind of create other pieces of work. So use it with music, use it with film, use it in the live space. And through that, I met a lot of poets that were experimenting with poetry and film at the time, like Julian Knox and Caleb Femi. And so I ended up producing some films with them, which I didn't know how to produce a film. We didn't know how to make a film. It was just sort of like we were just going to figure it out and just see what happens. Then did lots of random stuff. I went to work for a couple of festivals, like Festival in Glastonbury, which was really strange and not very me, but it was just something that I wanted to do to look at what it meant to work on that scale. So that was crazy. So I did that, and then kind of fell into freelancing. So I kind of freelance at the moment I do a lot of kind of short films, branded content. I did my first TV thing last year on a mini-series called How to Be a Person, and kind of still experimenting with work that tends to be really interdisciplinary, so work that works with a lot of different art forms, which is what I'm really interested in, and stories that are kind of told in a very creative way, and stories that we don't necessarily get to hear or see as much. I think like producing is no one really knows what it is. I still don't really know what it is, to be honest. I think every producer kind of molds it for themselves, but the crux of it is just, for me, I'll usually come into an idea at its very genesis. So someone might just be like, oh, I have an idea to do a thing, and then I will see it through to its realization. So everything that we need to do to get it to be a physical, tangible thing is basically my role as a producer.
Yeah, amazing. I think that whole thing of just all of these paths that we didn't even know were possible until you're kind of half in the industry, it's like a really important reason for panels like this, so people can actually have some visibility of like what you can be that you don't get taught in school.
Yeah. It's like when you realise how much work actually goes into everything.
Yeah, it's like
suddenly
a film
all of
doesn't
these
just
roles emerge.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and it's the same in like the music industry or film. It's like, you know what a director is and you know what actors are, but do you know about producers? Do you know about set designers? Do you know about all of these people that make up these projects? I think the next question I want to ask is, at what point did you realise, after kind of starting your path in one direction, that you were able to kind of utilise the skills you had into multiple avenues? If there was one moment, if there was a particular job that kind of taught you that, and if there's any ways that you kind of had to work through, like, oh, but I'm this, or like, you know, kind of that self-definition as well. So maybe let's start with Kevin. That Kevin.
I think that moment, I don't know if I ever happened upon it. I just think I'm black and live in this country, Babylon, and every single door just seems to be shut, was being shut in my face, or if I excel too much, then the tempo of the thing would change and the rules would change. Yes, I don't think there was ever a moment I just realized that everybody that was meant to be guiding me, all of these institutions, were on some kind of joke thing. I was like, this is long, because if I try to do it your way and play along, I'm never gonna get there. And so from early, I've always been about building my own table, building my own doorways, and also helping people and just being of service in that way, without worrying about what the repayment will be. And the reason why I'm able to do the things I am able to do today and the connections that I have is purely based on kindness and having morals and principles and being very honest with people about my boundaries and respecting their boundaries. That's the simplest way that I can put it. I tried to go to uni. I actually taught, I always say that I went to the University of YouTube, because to me, I'll just go on YouTube and I will be in a black hole of whatever the thing is, 4 hours, come out, I've got it, and I can do it. Always been that way. But tried to go to uni and tried to do a degree in photography. And by the time I went to go and do that, I'd already had like a portfolio and I'd been published in Name a magazine, I'd been published in it. But I felt like, regardless, I needed that degree to be like, went there, showed them my portfolio, and they're like, this is great, go straight to the second year, don't worry about the first year, you're really talented. So boom, I'm gassed. 3 months in, I realized I had to leave because, I was gonna have to throw hands at some tutors, and I was like, it's not the space for me. Like, you guys were gassed about my natural talent. Imagine I come to you with a book of who I am, and you're gassed about it, and then as soon as you get me in the building, well, no, you need to make it this way. But why? Because you've literally just allowed me to skip a whole year. Didn't make sense. So I left after 3 months and carried on working and built my way up. And then advertising, I'd hit a glass ceiling because I realized I was in rooms and the ideas were messy. They didn't make sense. They were problematic. They weren't intersectional enough. They weren't diverse. Like, people get gassed in adverts and be like, we've got one black person, we've done it. No, you haven't. Like, there's no queer representation, trans representation, la 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 la. You can do all of that if you're really smart and simple with your ideas in one advert, right? Or actually, just breaking it down even more, it's like, who are you actually talking to in this advert? And that should be your answer. And so I was doing a lot of like photography, and slowly but surely that turned into moving image. And so I started directing and making things in that way, but I realized that specifically in the commercial realm, I wasn't getting to those ideas at the inception. So by the time they'd come to me as a photographer or director, everything was set. The script was set, everything was out, and I was like, I need to be in this earlier. I need to be creating a thing and have to say. So I just stopped everything, got a job in an advertising agency, and I took a role as like in-house editor. Literally stopped all the money that I was getting and stuff, and had to live off of savings, and just stopped and like really humbled myself and just was quiet in that space. All of them took me for, wow, I probably can't swear. Let me rephrase that. Let me behave.
A fool?
A muck. All of them tried to take me for a muck. I'm from South, by the way. All of them tried to take me for a muck, and I just was like, cool, like, you lot can just pretend like, I knew that I was bright and I knew that I could do the things, but I thought, I'm just gonna take all the information I need, because actually, while you're taking me for an idiot, you're not stopping my access to the things that I need to learn. Because what you'll find is if you run up to people, you're like, this is what I want, la 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 la. Especially those specific people, they will maneuver to stop you from getting that information. So yeah, got that job. Long story short, was in advertising for 6 years in terms of agency side, and went from the editor into a junior creative, found a partner with a creative partner, so there's usually 2 of you when you're doing advertising. You work as a team. So one will be words and one will be images, and your work is the same. If you're going to fire my partner, I'm going to walk. If they try to fire me, he's like, cool, deuces, I'm out. We get paid the same. When we do interviews, we go into the interview, you have to pick us up as a unit, which is really, really helpful because that environment is so stressful. But if you've got like a true friend and also you love creating with and they've got your back, it makes it a little bit easier. So yeah, went from junior creative to midway, then you go to senior, then you go creative director, then you go up to ACD, which is associate creative director, and then the ECD with it, which is an executive creative director. And I did all of those things and ran accounts with budgets in the millions and delivered on all of those things. But all of it was really, really hard, and we had to maneuver and do those things. But all of that to say, a lot of that time I was dumbing down. I still had voice, and I'd be like, I'm not doing this, and I'd walk off jobs, but I just concentrated on the information that I needed. Within all of that, I had started POC. If you remember, I said I started POC about 4 years ago, and was starting to build the things. I'm like, oh, so this is how you charge for this, and this is what this is called. And I've also always been a big fan of learning everybody's job, so I know what a producer is. And why that's important is, if me and you are working together, I understand the language that you speak, and vice versa, and there's no clashing. Yeah. I understand how much time you need to look at the budget and put it together. I understand if an idea comes in and it's like $5,000, you're concerned about that. I can't come to you with an idea for $100,000. You're like, how are we going to make this? So it's all within that time. I was just grabbing all the information that I could to make my own table. And then at the beginning of last year, said deuces to that last place. A lot of the clients wanted to come and work with us anyway, because they were like, we're literally only here because you guys are here, you're here. And started writing film and all of the bits, and now all of the things are in place. All of the good people that I met along the way, always kept in contact with. I don't even know if that answered the question, but I feel like I said some good stuff.
No, there was some good stuff in there, for sure. Yeah, and I think the key there was also like that patience of like, biding your time.
Yeah, I think it's very, I'll say this quickly before we move on, I think it's very easy to look online and see people doing things and think that was an easy bake. Like, I'll put it in the oven 30 minutes. No, this is like 10 years in the making, and all of it hasn't been fun. All of it hasn't been fun, and all of it, some of it has been really stressful, but for the most part now, I'm at a level and in a space of freedom that I wouldn't give up for anything. And I did it my way, and nobody can take it away from me. In a way that I think that you were talking about with the labels, right?
Yeah, that's, you build your own thing, which is infinitely more value or worth all of the
100%.
Stress and strife or whatever.
Yeah, and then you can just walk away. I won't name some of the brands, but there's been certain things recently, and they were wild. I'm like, okay, that's cute. I'm gonna go now, and they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I'm not.
No, but it feels good to walk away.
100%.
That's like your validation.
Yeah.
That's like. Am I allowed to just interject?
Am I allowed to talk? Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't know if it was just like, you talk.
Yeah, no.
It's like, since I started doing things independently, I had my biggest song through my own label by double the amount of sales and streams. So like, that was when like the curtains were like, the veil was lifting, and I'm like, okay, so like, the artist is at the core of that. That's something that a record label can throw money at something, and they might, open the doors and remove certain gatekeepers and stuff like that. But if you're at a certain point, for me at least, it made sense to get rid of that. And then when I had this song like blow up, it's like suddenly people that had literally, I'd left the label, didn't say goodbye, didn't anything, cut the funding off my project, all this kind of stuff, would then literally be like texting me, and then had, you know, the same types of people from other like major pop labels and stuff be like, oh, we love the album. And I'm like, no, you don't, bro. And like, obviously, you take the meeting because you're not, you know, you never know.
Yeah.
But like, it does feel good to be able to be like, you know what, I've got my own thing, but thanks, yeah.
No, because 100%, because the thing is, the biggest lie I would say is that, yes, 100, 1,000 other people are trying to do the same thing that you were doing, right? Cool. And what I'm doing. But I have no fear of it could be 1 million, but those 1 million people cannot do specifically what I do, what I bring to the table, what you bring to the table, what you bring to that is your magic, and that's what you need to tap into. Just follow that, and you'll be completely fine. I promise.
And other people get it wrong if they try and do it for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
or rip you off.
you'll start raging out, like you were saying, that, you know, people trying to guide your work or to, you know, change your photography style or whatever it was. It's just like, you know, some people built different, and it's like you don't hear it.
Yeah.
But that's for a good thing.
100%.
Yeah. But then I also do think there's the element of you were able to almost learn the system first, because I think that's important to then, when you go out on your own, to know how it all functions, to know that side and be prepared in your own space as well, which I think is vital.
Anyone in this room to like know.
Yeah,
I mean, that's why this panel is hopefully useful, is like trying to show that there is just so much to learn, and you can make mistakes or
I will say in these things though that your network is already here. Like, it's cool, connect with me and people on this panel, amazing, but also like you guys have got next, if that makes sense. So it's like you have to, while I was doing all of these things and learning, I was still building my own network. So all the people that, like, Joy is like my brethren, but I've known her for a while. I think you said Christania and them known for a while, and there is again that thing where it's like, oh, you know everyone. It's like, no, like everyone's just been building for the longest time, and like we all helped each other, and it's just, but your network is already here. Find out like what people are doing literally sat next to you.
Yeah. So Nez, I wanted to ask you, I know you even touched on it before in terms of shifting from kind of having that policy as your your main career to questioning why that has to be everything for you. Were there any specific challenges that you faced in making that decision to say, I can apply my skills to multiple avenues?
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say, like, I thought, you know, being an artist is like the coolest thing in the world, and it is, but at the same time, the art world is incredibly elitist, and like I didn't understand to the extent that it was. So, for example, I'd like really to talk about class for a second, because class plays a major role, and I'm working class, right? So I grew up on free school meals, single dad and a brother, no women around, so nobody to practice henna on, which is, you know, what I do, I guess. And also, you know, limited access to creativity, so didn't grow up in London. I grew up in Milton Keynes, very small town, built in the 60s, has no character, doesn't even have one art gallery. So I remember going to my dad and living on a council estate, going to my dad and saying like, oh, I'd love to be a photographer when I grow up, you know. I'm age 10 around this time, and my dad turns around and he goes, photography mein kya paisa hai? Yeah, and what that translates to, what money comes out of photographing people, right? And I literally turned around and I went into my bedroom and I had a little cry and I was okay. But I knew that it was one element to the whole thing. So like you said, things are intersectional. And I know that arts funding comes from politics. Who provides the funding from arts? Who is cutting the funding into arts, right? So I knew I had to get political to get to the integrating into the art world, which was my passion. Like, inherently, my existence was political. So I remember when I got into sixth form, when we used to have an allowance, an education maintenance allowance, which is now scrapped, but that was literally my lifeline. You get £30 for going into sixth form, for, you know, getting your A-levels if you're from a really poor background, shall we say, or impoverished background. And then if you do really well, you get that £30 and you can spend it on books and things like that. I remember when I'm 28 now, I look baby, but still repping, but yeah. But yeah, at the time, it was being scrapped. So that £30, which I used to spend on my other things, like I'd buy a book, or I'd buy like a camera to photograph things, and that would give me access to these kind of things. That was gone. So I organized a protest at my school. I was like, allow this is long for me. Not all of yous are like, this doesn't affect half the people in this school. It only affects me and like 10 other people. We're gonna I don't care, we're not going into school that day. We're literally gonna stand outside the gates and we're just gonna have banners out. People thought I was crazy, all of this, all of that. And the teacher, my politics teacher told me, she was like, you're going to lose your education maintenance allowance for that particular week if you go to protest, because you had to have 100% attendance. I was like, I don't care. This is so important to me that it's beyond the 30 quid for this week particularly. I'll wait till next week. I'm going to protest. So I organised a protest. It was, the fees still got scrapped, don't get me wrong, but the point was that it mobilized me and my friends to be able to do something, and I thought that was a really important thing. And that inspired me to go into study politics and be a policymaker. And I, by the way, still am that. So I'm a civil servant by trade, and I've taken the day off from my job. So what I do is I work 9 to 5 in the Treasury in the office, which is a government building in Whitehall, which is in Westminster. I go and brief ministers, and then from 5 to 9 p.m. I go and do henna on people. And yeah, that makes absolute no sense because I wear those two hats and I dress very differently to other policymakers. So I don't fit in the space that I work in from my 9 to 5. First of all, I couldn't afford to just freelance from the back of just because I was really, really poor. I couldn't just be like, yeah, I'm just going to get up and go be an artist. That's great for some people, and that works if you're really well connected, if you're from London, if you know people, you've been networking since you were a teenager. I wasn't one of those people, so I had a passion for other things too, and I knew I wanted to make a difference. I knew I wanted to make things for me better. If I could go back in time, what things would be in place that would make things easier for me, for the country, right? So when I go into the office, I'm wearing a suit and my hair is slicked back, and I'm talking different accents. I'm code switching. I'm not talking like this. I'm talking like, yes, Minister, how are you doing today? All of that, and putting on my best fucking apologies. You can apologies for that. So I do code switching a lot, which is a really big thing for my identity, and I really apologize for that, guys. Sorry, I'm doing
No, you're fine.
But yeah, so that is a big element of that. And then at in the evenings, I'm surrounded by artists and people from the creative industry, and I'm navigating around that space, and artists are very different to policymakers, I tell you that. There's no schedule often, things happen randomly, people come and you have to go to an event, and sometimes you meet amazing people, sometimes it's random people who've come out from UAL, graduated straight from art school and have had a silver spoon ready to feed them, and been you can go and exhibit in this area, and here's the person for this art gallery, blah, blah, blah. And so yeah, it's a really interesting concept, but I think the more I became aware of race and also about class consciousness, it helped me to be able to navigate in those spaces more comfortably. And because I was so shy, I don't think you understand, I was one of those people that would never put their hands up in the classroom. I couldn't read out loud. I'd find reading by myself at, in my room, but if somebody asked me to read out loud, I would literally stutter all the time. And I think it took me a very long time to be comfortable moving in those two spaces and navigating the duality of it, because I wasn't artistic enough for the artist because I'd not gone to art school and I didn't know anybody in London, and I was still trying to find everybody out. And then I wasn't political or educated enough in my work context because everybody was out of Oxford and Cambridge. and I hadn't gone to any of those universities, and literally every single person in my team was from there. Everybody was from middle class backgrounds, and they go skiing on holidays, right? What do you do over the weekend? Well, I went to the Alps, French Alps, right? And what do I do on the weekends? I'm doing henna in the mosque. That's what I'm doing. So, you know, it's different. So, like, navigating that took a while. But I think my point is to not have this perspective that you're just going to, like, go into this space and it's going to be a linear thing. Like, it's okay to zigzag, wobble around. It's not going to be a straight curve. It can be like, some days are really bad. Like, some days I have imposter syndrome, terrible imposter syndrome. I'm like, I'm not. I think the other day I was at dinner with my dad and I was like, oh, you know, Dad, do you remember, like, I wanted a camera and you couldn't afford to buy me one because cameras really costly. But it's now my photography was published in, like, it's nice that it's a kind of a journal kind of a vibe. It's like a little, and then it's a website essentially that curates stuff. And I showed him and he was like, oh, that's nice. And, you know, it doesn't mean anything to him because he's an immigrant dad. But, like, for me to be able to do that and also say that I'm doing this meant so much to me. And, you know, it doesn't come with ease. I think the idea is to be able to bring your whole self to these spaces and really, like, just go with it. Like, I think some spaces are going to be really white and some spaces are going to be really, really cis, and some spaces are going to be just really, really elitist, and that's fine. Like, carry yourself with your true self. And I'd also say that sometimes I have more in common with my white working class brothers and sisters than some people in government that I work with that are black or brown. Like, I work with black ministers and I'm like, wow, we have a completely different, like, you know, I can't relate to you lot. But then I go into an art space and it will be completely different. So I think it is intersectional for me. It is never like this or that. I think I am both, and that's how I navigate these kind of areas. But yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's something in there about, like, the different parts feeding different parts of you as well, which is something that's really important when you're a multi-hyphenate. Like, you might gain something from, like, directing that you might not gain from producing, or you might bring a different version of yourself or energy to being in that office that you don't get necessarily from your henna. So it can be about, like, taking what you need from different pockets too. We kind of touched on you, Will, but do you have anything you wanted to add?
On this?
What
was the question?
Can
I call a friend?
I forgot the question myself. How can you, like, utilize, or did you have a moment when you realized that you could utilize your skills in multiple ways?
I think music demands it of you to be able to do loads of different things, and it is also, you know, a really exciting thing. Like, if you want to try all the different creative pursuits, then being an artist is like an amazing excuse to do that, because, you know, when people that do it really well, you know, if you have more stuff about you, like, even if you make pops, like, if you're a music artist and you're sharing that on your social media or something, it kind of makes you, like, you know, puts the whole thing into color, and it's kind of, you can kind of hang everything around this, like, sun that is your music, and everything's orbiting around. But yeah, like, when doing things independently, you know, you just have to take a kind of front seat. You know, you have to get into the driving seat on, like, you know, hooking up with a director, or, you know, pulling together the art team, or, you know, organising your live shows. Like, every element of it. Usually at a label that will be like 20 people, the jobs will be divided up, but since kind of building this thing by myself, you know, I work with my management team, there's like 4 of us in total, but it is most, you know, they have other people to look after, so it's just mostly me just, like, pulling together this network of creatives, you know. And it's kind of, it's like what you were saying when you're like, that you know everyone around you or something, but it's basically just, yeah, it's the people that you work with, your mates, you work with the people that you know, and then you kind of all ascending to a certain level together, and then you have basically, you've essentially then constructed a label of freelancers.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, yeah, that's been my journey with it.
Amazing. And Tobi, anything you wanted to add there before we...
What was the question?
At what point did you realise you could utilise the skills that you had in producing and, like, bring those to the other things that you do now?
I mean, I think it's something that everyone does in their day-to-day anyway. Like, you take all of the things that you learn on a day-to-day basis and you apply it to the things that you need to apply it to. But I guess in the context of creating, I think there are two kind of main ways to do that, and one of those was just making stuff with my friends, because things weren't linear. Everyone was kind of doing everything. Everyone was kind of helping out in trying to like help each other figure this stuff out, because we didn't know what we were doing. And I think that really allowed us to be like, oh, okay, well, this thing needs to be done, and I don't know, I'm really good at sewing, and you know someone that can get us material. You know, you're collectively gathering your skills in order to make something happen. So I think there's just one element of that, which is just like, when you're in the middle of figuring things out, for me, it was the kind of making things with my friends that gave me access to even like unlock what are the things that I know. Because I don't think it's a case of like, you just come up being like, okay, cool, like these are all the skills I have. There are still skills that I'm discovering that I have with every project that I do, because they are so different. And I think the other thing was also just about figuring out, cool, like these are all the different things I'm interested in. What are the things that link all of those things together? Like, what is, I guess, the spine of the work that I do, which means that regardless of what art form I work in or what kind of artist I work with, that spine is always the same. The project can change drastically, but at its core, it has to have this thing in order for me to move forward and pursue it. So yeah, I don't think it needs to be massively complicated in terms of, you know, like, oh, I do one thing and I have these set skills and there's this other thing that I'm interested in. I think it's something, we are malleable every single day. I don't really think there needs to be a huge difference when it comes to stepping into the creative space or whatever kind of space it is that you exist in. I think there's maybe more hesitance around kind of like quote unquote failure or quote unquote messing things up, and I think that is the thing that holds a lot of people back from just playing and testing, because ultimately that's all it is. We're just sort of playing around and being like, okay, cool, this is the thing that we've made. Afterwards, every project that I work on, I always do this like big self-evaluation, which is just like, cool, like, well, all the things that I've learned, what are the things that I think I've done really well, what am I really proud of, what are the things that happened that I did not foresee at all, and how do I want to take that into another project. But I don't think there's ever going to be a point where I'm going to feel like I know everything. So regardless of how long I've kind of like stayed in a particular sector or in an organization even, I think I will always be malleable and I will always still be learning about how to transfer those skills. But I think just play around with it, just test it. It's the most fun part of making and creating and working with other people. I think it's just like figuring things out and being like, oh, like, damn, like, you know how to do that, I know how to do that. Oh, actually, I have a friend that knows XYZ and can get us what we need. Like, those are the moments where I think you kind of uncover how you might want to use your skills in different ways.
Interesting. Yeah, I agree. I think that what you said about the kind of evaluation after each project is a really interesting way of like checking in with yourself as well as you grow, because you might have a wildly different experience from one project to the next in the same sector that might be more different than like producing one film and then directing another. 100%. So that's super interesting. I think if we move on to kind of talk about, would you all say that you're freelance now? Yeah? To a certain extent.
Half, yeah.
I think especially with hidden careers, it's something that it would be useful to hear any practical advice that you've got about seeking out and finding work and actually making sure that you're still visible even if the work that you're doing is behind the scenes. So does anyone have any particular experiences with that? And I think advertising is probably a good place to start, because I think it's something that lacks visibility unless you're in it.
Yeah, I mean, as an advertising creative and freelance, you know, there are recruiters that talk to agencies in that way and have briefs come up and like they're looking for someone for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. When me and Tom, my creative partner, started in that first agency, and it was hell. And it really was. And because what's interesting about what you were saying about code switching is I made the conscious decision to never code switch in that space or any of those spaces. Because I felt like if I was going to comment in terms of the authenticity of the work of these things, my concerns I felt like carried a lot further if I just spoke like if I was speaking on road, like it is what it is. And also there's nothing wrong with the way that I sound and the way that I speak. It's a mixture of my grandparents, it's the mixture of South London and all the things that I love the most about being black and from London and Jamaica. But I think in terms of, when we first started, we had like one piece of work there, one piece of work there, one piece of work here. And I was like, damn, like we need to get out of here, but in order to get out of here, we have to have a big body of work, but we don't have a big body of work. What do we do? So we decided that we would concentrate on trying to find pro bono briefs, as in with charities, and help charities do different things. So one of the biggest things that we did when we first started, we were like, right, the results from men getting checked back then for prostate cancer, can't remember what it was, but it wasn't a good, the odds weren't great. So we found a racehorse and changed the name of the racehorse to prostate cancer and told men to bet on it if you think the odds are so good. And we did that of our own accord. Like there were designers that we got on really well with within the agency that helped us design the thing. We had other friends that did bits and bobs, and all of this was, we'd finish work at 5, and then we'd be there till 1 a.m. And some people are like, I can't believe how you do that with the energy and stuff, but you man will like literally finish your job, then go raving, and then go back to it. It's the same energy. Like keep the same energy, stop being silly. Like we can all do it. I'm not Molly May and thing about 24 hours in a day, that's wild. But what I'm saying is chill.
She's got a point, that's what you're saying.
Do you know what I mean though? But it's like
with the drive when you have the goal.
Like I disappeared on and that was good as well, because I disappeared on French for about 3-4 years because I was concentrating, and then when I came back, some of them disappeared. I was like, cool, you weren't real in the first place. But the other ones were like, no, I saw what you were doing, it's cool, it all makes sense. But we really made our own work and went and did things for free. People are always looking for help. So we went and did that and built that up. And I think, quickly to move on, specifically in advertising, you can also just go off and make ideas that you think are cool. You can take brands and blatantly go to brands and be like, I think what you're doing is rubbish, but this is what I would do with your brand, and show them. And actually the audacity of that and almost shaming the devil to a certain extent really works well within that space. So I think as a creative and as an artist as well, art isn't free. I feel like that's literally what you're saying, and everything you're saying, I was like, same experience. Like when I was talking about uni, the main beef at uni was I only ever shot on 2-for-1 cameras from Boots, because that's the thing that I could afford. Everyone else had this big Nikon, this, that, and then when I got like that first loan, they were like, great, you're gonna buy a camera. I was like, no, I'm paying rent. I don't know where you think I'm from. Like, it doesn't work like that. And art isn't free, and that's why those with like a trust fund and whatever, no tea, no shade, but they're able to just hang out, because half of advertising as well is you might give me a brief and be like, you might be a Nike or whatever, right? And you're like, we need to sell these trainers. You tell me what your problem is. Cool. I'm going to be real. I will then let that sit in my brain for about 2 days straight and do nothing with it, because I need it to cook. You need time to like figure out what your feeling is. And every single time I come back 2 days later and I'm like, so, and it's all there. For me, that's how my creativity works. Like, I take time with it. Time is money, etc., etc., etc. So if you're trying to build up your portfolio in that environment, you're going to have to give up some of your free time and just focus for a minute. None of it is easy. None of it is given. And it's a liberty, because I know that I deserve reparations, and all of us do, and all the things, right? But that isn't the way that it is. So you find your own ways and you start making your own things. You you just got to start. I'm always saying that, start the team, just start, and don't feel like you were touching on this a bit. There is this thing of like, I put it out and it's perfect. That's nonsense. Like, there's things I put out last year people are absolutely gassed about, and I'm over it because I've evolved already, and I'm like, why did you shoot that like that? Why did you like this like that? Da 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 da. As you were saying, you never. That's the point of being a creative and an artist. I think like you never get to that point where like you've mastered the thing. That's a myth. You're in it to kind of just perfect your technique and grow and learn. Make mistakes. Put the work out. Everybody in the room hates it. Cool. Why does everyone in the room hate it? Right, I'm going to come back bigger and better. Cool. I've mastered that now, but how do I change up my flavour? So yeah, I don't even know if I answered the question again.
I don't either, but I'm inspired, so it's fine. I forgot what the question was as well. Yeah, so hidden...
I got it. Don't worry, I got you. Sis. So just at the back of your, like what you've just said as well, I think, so me, I am now, at the time, this is like 2015, I'm fresh out of university, debt, student loan, I have stacked it up, and man's got no job, and I'm like, okay, this is great, everybody's got jobs, apart from me, and I'll tell you, getting a job is not easy in this economic climate, like we've had an economic crash in 2008, and after that, oh my God, the tuition fees tripled. I was like, wow, this is long. So I come to London with no money and lots of debt, and I'm just like, I'll just get a job anywhere. So any job comes my way. Every day for like at least months and months, I'm just applying for jobs. Finally get a job. It's just at a university. It's an arts university, Goldsmiths. So I'm just doing admin work, nothing creative, nothing political, nothing that I'm particularly passionate about. But it's an arts university, and there's a lot of artists around there, and that's something that I really like. So what's my first thing I do is just start connecting with people in the area. I'm living in South London at this point. The area's vibrant, New Cross Gate, lots of, Jamaican shops. I go hang around there, meet people, literally just look at the different cultures around me, what kind of art is being produced there, try and connect that way. Go to any events that they're hosting at the university that I'm working at, or outside the university, any kind of events that the council's hosting. I go to these events, and that's where I meet my art partner, Sabira, and that's how it started. And eventually I was able to move job and pay my bills and do that, but at the same time I was building a network of people, and I didn't have to code switch, which was nice, and I could be myself. And for me, my authentic self, when I'm my authentic self, is when I'm making art with the people I love, and I'm decolonizing art and education. That's what I'm passionate about, right? So when I met Sabira, and I could see that she was of Bengali heritage, working class, grew up in East London, Brick Lane area, seen the area gentrified, blah, blah, blah. Lots of similar experiences. We just became friends, and having that friend was so, so important because she had access to a lot of spaces that I didn't have access to. I had access to spaces that she didn't have access to, and we kind of shared that knowledge, right, without even knowing that we were doing it. It was subconscious, so we would have a conversation. She'd be like, what did you do today? I was like, I went to the office, met this person. Should we go have dinner with this person, blah, 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 and she'd do the same. And that's how we would exchange networks without actually consciously doing it. Thinking back at it is really, really vital and important because we met so many people through doing that. And, met photographers, producers, people who worked in advertising, went to On Road, which was based in Shoreditch, met Tarek, met loads of creatives like that. And Tarek, he had the access to, God knows, every young person in London. Used to do campaigns for Nike and stuff. And
You meet someone there called Taylor?
yeah,
That's my
yeah,
sister.
mad, nice. Yeah, I do know Taylor. Yeah, I know your sister, I guess. But yeah, that's how I met Taylor as well. So, you know, just going to these like spaces and just talking to people and talking about what I'm passionate about specifically and what I can bring to the table, what my opinions are of the world and what my experiences are. And I guess really seeing that representation in the non-tokenistic way possible and making it as authentic as possible, because at the moment, I guess, in advertising and in lots of other art spaces, right, everything's now a tick box exercise. So it's like, right, let's get a mixed race person, let's get a black dad and a white mum, let's get a trans person. Like, now Euphoria is really cool, so let's get, like, I don't know, a trans person to be on the cover of this magazine. And it's just, that's not authentic art to me. And connecting with people on a basis of not just heritage, but their life experiences and what they can bring, having that authentic culture exchange was really important to be able to network.
Just to add to that quickly as well, I think there's something really important in that, connecting in that way and also finding the parts of you that need support and the parts of you that can support others. So with my partnership with Tom, I'm an August Virgo, Tom is a September Virgo. I go from 0 to 1,000.
I can tell.
Any kind of passive aggressive energy in the email is a wrap, right? Whereas Tom is a bit like, okay, and like we'll play around for a bit. But the reason why we work so well is we balance each other out. And then sometimes Tom is like, you know what? I try to help them get them, and I'm like, great, and I'm off. And then on the flip side of that, it's like, you know what? We just need to see this through. Tom, can you communicate with them? Because if I talk to them, it's going to be a wrap. And I think within whatever field that you want to be in, it's about being vulnerable and being very open and honest about what you need from people, and also being open and honest, like I said at the beginning, in service of other people. That's where you're going to find your support, and you won't kind of lose your marbles trying to like survive in that space thinking everything's perfect. No one knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Sorry to hog the mic. I'm literally one thing. Get a mentor. Like, doesn't matter. Just anybody who has access to something that you think is amazing, just ask them to like mentor you, and that goes a long way.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. To move on to another question for you two, I think another thing that would be good to hear about is balance as well, and like how you are able to maintain balance when balancing projects that demand different things from you and your time and all of those things. And yeah, just any kind of learnings you have.
We can discuss my lack of balance. But no, yeah, it can get like, there's definitely a lot of stress to like the spinning of plates. Yeah. I always feel like as soon as I've got one element of what I do sorted, I'm like, wicked, like record is mixed and mastered, artwork's looking good, it's off to vinyl, it's doing whatever. And then suddenly like you'll miss a massive element of it, like, oh wait, yeah, the live show. And it is exhausting to kind of keep tabs on that, and that's where, that's probably the element of, that's why I work with a manager, is because, you just need someone, you need a partner to kind of keep tabs on that thing.
Yeah.
If you're the creative.
Maybe it links back to Kevin finding someone else to.
As well, right?
Yeah,
because like, manager probably like, I'd love to organise, great, like.
Yeah, literally. I mean, yeah, I would hate to have that job. Like being a manager would be like, nah, that's not for me. But it might be for one of you guys. Who knows? But yeah, no, I think as well. Like you do need to. You were talking about just the lifestyle of like working into the evening and stuff, or just like having the energy to do stuff. I mean, for me personally, I found that I did kind of have to draw really like normie boundaries to what I was doing. I got like super depressed, like working endlessly on my music and all of the things that went with that, because it's a cruel industry in that you can work really, really hard and then for whatever reason it doesn't connect and it doesn't happen. It's not necessarily a hard work equals great results type thing.
For every, yeah.
Yeah, literally. Yeah. Well, yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And, I did have to, I thought it was, there's definitely this idea that when you're an artist, you give everything of yourself and your time to the thing. And, I think that's what you feel in your heart, and that's what you're kind of drawn to, but it does kind of need taming a little bit. And I literally had to put in, wouldn't it be cool if I'm just 9 to 5ing this?
Wouldn't it be cool if I had weekends?
Yeah, well, literally, because I would get to, I would reach a point of exhaustion and then do nothing on a Tuesday or something. And that would, a Tuesday and a Wednesday would be an unproductive days for me, and then I'd be damn it, I haven't done anything. Start blasting through a load of work through the weekend, and then my friends who are in more kind of, they're employed or they're in a more rigid job or whatever, you get to the weekend, they want to hang out and stuff, that's when social things are happening, that's when, my girlfriend at the time would want to do stuff, and I'd be well, I'm actually way behind on stuff, or I would just feel this internal guilt that I should be working on my stuff. So yeah, I stopped. I'm not doing this right now. I should clarify. It's a constant battle to stay in these regimes, and there will be points where you just will have to work until 2 a.m. or something to get something delivered. But yeah, I think for having kind of structures of, I used to cut off work. I would cut off work at 6, and then I wouldn't do weekends. Also incorporating stuff like exercise, lifestyle, stuff like that.
All those things you're ugh, and then you do them and you're
no,
I hate that this works.
They're important because your mental health is your creativity, isn't it? So it's if you're just willing to throw that to the side, expect your art to get worse, expect you to do worse jobs and everything.
I'm glad that you mentioned that as well, because I think just to clarify, when I was talking about till 2 a.m, whatever, I think there's
Sigma grind set.
there's a period of this thing has to be finished, and then after that period, tomorrow, I've just had that period, and then I'm on break for a week, and then I come back again, and there's a period of things, and then there needs to be break in between. But you're right, your mental health, emotionally as well, is the heart of everything.
I'd actually be interested to see what all of your guys' experience with this is, but I had a really good conversation with a publishing company that I've been looking to license my stuff with yesterday, and it's a conversation I had a bunch of times, but it's just being able to weather, when you're saying there's periods of mania and it's so much work to do, and then there will be periods where you're just well, I've finished that, you've reached the finish line of a massive project or something, and then you're going back to your flat, and then you're just doing your groceries or something, and you're dealing with this peaks and troughs of doing really exciting things and being kind of the epicenter of a project, to then suddenly having to find the next thing, or just having to take a few days for yourself. Is that something that you guys struggle with, this up and down of the whole process? I'll throw it to you.
Tobi?
Yes. Yeah, there is. But I think I'm going to...
It's not up, is it?
Yeah. I'm going to try and double up the last thing that we spoke about in terms of freelancing and finding work, and then this thing about balance, because I think there are some practical things that I want to say in both of them. So in terms of finding balance, I think it's something that everyone struggles with, especially in the creative industries, because people don't have boundaries. They're just I'm going to send you this email at 1 a.m. And then I'm going to email again at 9 a.m. being did you see my no, I didn't. So I think there is a thing about having personal boundaries, and you are the person that has to enforce those boundaries and stick to them, or find yourself an accountability partner that will make you stick to them. I personally have a constant out of office on my email that basically just says, thank you for your email, I've probably seen it, I'm working on lots of different things, so it's going to take me a while to get back to you. If it's important, resend it and put time sensitive in the subject, so I just know that when I'm working through my emails, those are the ones that I go to first. People rarely do that, actually, so I'm just okay, cool, I know that this thing isn't majorly important, but the urgency of their email, if I hadn't enforced that boundary, would make it seem like I need to respond to it there and then. I try to stick within certain hours of working. If I go beyond those hours, I need to justify to myself why I'm doing that. Constantly asking the question of, do I need to send this message right now? Do I need to do I need to say this thing to this person right now? Are they even going to see it right now? Or can this wait until the morning? No one's going to die if it waits until the morning. It's fine. So there's one thing just about setting your boundaries and being very clear to other people about those boundaries. I think there's another thing about being very honest with yourself about the amount of work that you can take. I think there's this idea that, if I say no to something, it's never going to come back around. It always does come back around. I've experienced that myself as well, where I've been like, I have to say yes because this is such an amazing opportunity, and I just end up doing a very bad job because I'm trying to do too much with not enough time, and there's no rest in between that as well. In my diary, my weekends are blocked out. So my diary is like my brain at this point. Everything goes in, even when I'm just chilling with my friends. So my weekends are blocked out, and it just says me time, and it's in there for the whole day. And that means that if someone messages me and they're like, could you do this job on a Sunday? When I physically go into my diary, I can see that I've blocked out my whole day. There's something in there. It's not just a gap. Because I think when it looks like we have free time, it's easier to feel like you have to fill that with stuff. And then again, if I override what's blocked out in my diary, I have to justify to myself whether it's necessary to do that. So I'll always try and keep my weekends to myself, or to see friends, to see family, to do stuff that isn't work related. But yeah, a lot of it really is just about us, like, enforcing those boundaries. Like, no, if people can step over those boundaries, they will, because at the end of the day, everyone has their own train of thought. Everyone has their own deadlines. Like, if they feel like you are super, if they feel like you're flexible, then that's it. They'll be like, yeah, sure. They'll get back to me. In my out of office email as well, I always say, if I do email past a certain time, do not respond to me. It's me kind of stepping over these boundaries, but there is no incentive for you to get back to me. And if I email you after 6 p.m, I'm not expecting a response. And it's just so people know that they don't feel that there's an urgency around this. Because if there was, I would just call them as well. Like, that's one thing. Really quickly, when it comes to like freelancing and finding work and finding opportunities, I think, one, if you are looking for a mentor, there are a couple of places you can go. There's I Like Networking, which is a mentoring scheme specifically for women and non-binary people. There's the Creative Mentor Network that pairs you with a mentor in whatever industry that you want to go into, and you get a nice little membership to Soho House, which is nice. Guap Magazine have just partnered with Adidas to run a mentoring scheme from emerging creatives as well. So the applications for that are literally open right now, so you could apply today if you wanted to. So there are a couple of things that are happening if you wanted to find a mentor, but also, I guess, meet other people, other peers that also work in the creative industries. When it comes to finding work, I think we're talking about finding work, we're talking about how we make money. Like, I think that's because
but also towards the start of the career stuff. Yeah,
but I think there's an abundance of work. The thing is, it's just that it's not paid because everyone is just trying to make things. Like, there is an abundance of people with ideas that want things made. So I think, yeah, if we're talking about that, or if we're talking about how you like live as a freelancer, I think they can be slightly differently. But I think in terms of like getting to the point of like wanting to start connecting with, I don't know, organizations, brands, stuff like that. Word of mouth is the fastest way that people get work. Like, that is how I've gotten the majority of my work. Sometimes I have no idea who's put me forward for certain things. Again, it does tend to be friends, but we've come up together, or they're people that we have worked with before. So, like I said before, just make the stuff with your friends and put it out there. I've had brands that have seen like short films that I've done like years ago that I know are terrible, or I know that I did a terrible job because I literally had no idea what they were doing, but they were like, oh, okay, like, you can do this, you have been able to, therefore we can give you the resource to do something better. So just make your stuff anyway and start building your portfolio with your friends, whatever that looks like. Figuring out how that portfolio is visible to people, where can people find you? Whether that's, I don't know, having like some kind of online space that your work is accessible to, whether it's about just sharing it around with people, just like, how do people find out who you are? and what it is that you can do. Figuring out what, I guess, your specific niche is, or what your interests are, and being very specific with that. I think the Channel 4 job that I just did, I've never worked in TV before. It's not a system that I'm familiar with at all. But I got that job because of my theatre background. They wanted a producer that could also work with the director and the writer to craft the scripts. And they wanted someone that had that specific skill, and I had that skill. And I've been very clear that this is all the areas that I've worked in, and these are all the skills that I've gained from all of these different spaces. So, there are millions of producers in the world. But again, like Kevin was saying, like, what is your specific niche, or your specific interests, or your specific areas of expertise that are going to make people say, oh, okay, cool, we need someone to do the job, but we need someone that has this particular lived experience or this particular area that we can then tap into. And then I also think it's just about letting people know that you are also looking for work. I see that all the time, people just being like, hey, like, I've got some availability, this is what I'm into, this is my email address, like, hit me up. I think, I don't know, sometimes people might assume that people are very busy and booked and busy, and they might not be.
I always like that when someone hits me up, so useful.
Yeah.
Sometimes.
Let me know if I can help.
Yeah, literally, I had someone hit me up that was like, they're like fresh out of uni and they were just looking to do some videography work they're like, oh, can we like shoot some of your shows on the next tour? And I'm like, that role is vacant right now, so like, yeah, sure, let's do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's people would definitely it takes some courage, I think, to like
100%.
slide in the DMs or
Yeah.
whatever.
I also
and put yourself out there.
I also think that there is a thing of like you should do that definitely, and then cool, you didn't hear from them. It's not about you going off into the corner and being pissed that nobody got back to you.
Yeah.
Like,
Just talking like this, yeah.
You can
Yeah.
literally, like a week later, hey, I'm just checking in again, like just to let you know I'm still looking for work. Like, people are busy and have like bills and ish to pay.
Yeah, and I think like 95%, maybe more, opportunities and avenues like in the creative industry I've had just don't happen. So like,
Yeah.
well, they don't come to fruition.
100%.
You know what I mean? And you can get so far down the line with something. This is just like a general lesson. Just don't tell people you're doing stuff until
it's there.
Until it's out there and
Yeah.
on a billboard or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, because it crumbles.
Sorry to stop you there,
No,
Will.
it's cool.
We are sadly out of time. I just had one more quick fire question that I wanted to ask. If you can say it in one sentence each. What is the biggest misconception about being a multi-hyphenate? Start with Tobi. No, I'll start with Kevin.
Yeah.
Start with Niz.
Oh. Okay.
Switch it up.
Misconception.
In
I
one
think.
sentence.
Yeah. So I think misconception would be that you need to know what you're doing, or you need to know what you're passionate about. I didn't know what I was passionate about for most. I still don't. I'm still learning every day. I'm going to keep it. I'm going to keep it short. But yeah, as a young person, don't be afraid to kind of carry on learning and change your mind on things. For example, like the more you learn every day, it's okay. The more knowledge that you have, you can change your opinion on certain things. So yeah.
That's a great one.
I'll jump in. I'm kind of copying this one from what you just said. But I was going to say, yeah, just building on that. Don't let a qualification, feeling qualified, feeling like you're good at something get in the way of you starting it. You'll obviously be bad at it when you start.
And that's okay.
Yeah, and that's fine. And also, hopefully, life is long, and like you can take your time to try out different things.
Yeah.
Don't feel like you need to do everything at once. Lean into what's working and then expand out.
Cool. Tobi?
I think the biggest misconception is that you're just indecisive about what it is that you want to do. But again, just be very clear with what the core of your work is, and it doesn't really matter what area you apply that to.
Yeah. Kevin?
I was trying to look for the full quote, and the internet's not connection, but there's that saying, jack of all trades is master of none. But that's not the full thing. There's another line, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but basically is that like you should just be having fun and doing all the things that you want to be doing. And I also think we refer referring back to Babylon again and the country that we live in and society that we currently live in, that, you know, hopefully we're all trying to change, is that the way things are currently set up is purely about control. So you can stay in that little box and do that one thing, and actually your destiny, who you want to be, it's not going to be easy, but it'll definitely be worth it for you to go on, as I said at the beginning, build your own tables and build your own kind of lane and enjoy your life. It's your life. If you're not like murdering people, if you're not moving like Prince Andrew,
How did we get here, Kevin?
Let's discuss.
We are out of
if
time
you're
to
not doing
discuss
all of
Prince
those
Andrew.
things, like,
Let's not get into the royal family just
listen,
yet.
yo, if you're not doing any of those things, like, it's all jigger. Like, go and make your art and find your way. Find a way in which works for you, because actually the world needs to see that. Someone needs to see that, and if it's just one person, great. It's like a domino effect.
Yeah. Exactly. That's a great note to end on. So thank you very much, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. Sorry we didn't get to do Q&A.